Last time we covered the life and reign of King Edwig, but today we're looking into the story of his younger brother, King Edgar the Peaceful, a king whose reign is seen as a golden age for England. But whilst this may have been a period of peace and stability, this was a product of his strength and strict control, not his gentle nature. He was a powerful and effective ruler who completed the job of uniting England, a job that started with his ancestors like Alfred the Great and King Athelstan. This is the story of King Edgar, the Anglo-Saxon ruler who may have created a golden age for England, but whose personal life and sudden death plunged the kingdom into chaos. Like his brother Edwig, Edgar grew up at a time when England was a work in progress. His great-grandfather Alfred the Great spent decades fighting off various Viking invasions whilst trying to bring together the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms of what we now know as England. Edgar was born around 943, and his childhood was anything but peaceful. When he was just a toddler, his father, King Edmund, was assassinated. The throne then eventually passed to Edgar's older brother, Edwig, and Edwig's reign was a complete disaster. Edwig was a young and ambitious king, but at the time he was seen as an arrogant ruler, and seemed determined to alienate every powerful person in the kingdom. His biggest mistake was picking a fight with the most influential churchman in the land, a man named Dunstan, which came to a head when Edwig exiled Dunstan. In 957, the powerful lords of the north rebelled, denounced Edwig, and declared the teenager Edgar as their king. For 2 years, England was split in two, but when Edwig suddenly died in 959, Edgar, at just 16 years old, became the undisputed king of a reunited but deeply fractured England, and his very first act was to bring back Dunstan from exile. So how does a 16-year-old fix a broken kingdom? Edgar was either incredibly smart, or he was being influenced by the much older and wiser Dunstan. Either way, he didn't just rule, he built the systems that would hold England together. First, he organised the country. He formalised the systems of shires or counties, and smaller districts called hundreds. This wasn't just drawing lines on a map, it was creating a structure for local government that made it easy to collect taxes and enforce royal justice everywhere. And incredibly, this system stayed in place for 1,000 years, right up until 1974. Next, he tackled the law. He was a firm ruler, but he was also pragmatic. In the east of England, an area known as the Danelaw was full of people of Danish descent. Instead of forcing his own laws on them, Edgar officially allowed them to keep their own customs. This move prevented rebellion and earned him their loyalty. But his most revolutionary reform was the money. Around 973, Edgar completely overhauled the currency. Before him, coins were a mess, with different weights and different qualities. Edgar introduced a single high-quality silver penny for the entire kingdom, with his face stamped on it. He set up a network of about 40 mints, so everyone had access to the new money. Edgar also understood that to rule England, he needed more than just good laws and money, he needed God on his side, or at least the church. His reign was defined by his powerful partnership with the Benedictine reform, a movement to make monasteries stricter and more spiritual. He teamed up with 3 leaders of this movement, his old ally Dunstan and 2 other influential monks, Athelwold and Oswald. He made them bishops and archbishops, giving them power to enact their reforms. In return, the church gave Edgar something priceless, a new ideology of kingship. They promoted the idea that the king was Vicarius Christi, the vicar of Christ on earth. This meant his power wasn't just political, it was divinely ordained. Edgar poured money and land into these new reformed monasteries, but this had a dark side. Much of that land was taken from traditional noble families, creating deep resentment that simmered just below the surface of this peaceful reign. He was creating a new class of powerful churchmen who were loyal to him, but he was making powerful enemies in the process. With England firmly under his control, Edgar looked to project his power across the whole island, and in 973, 14 years after he became king, he finally held his coronation. The ceremony was held in the ancient city of Bath, and designed by Dunstan, and it was so grand that it forms the basis of the British coronation to this day. And in a first for England, his wife Elfrith was crowned as queen alongside him. Next, Edgar marched his army to the city of Chester and summoned the other kings of Britain from Scotland, Wales and the Isles to meet him. And it's here we get one of history's greatest legends. The story goes that 8 of these sub-kings showed their loyalty by rowing Edgar in a barge down the River Dee, with Edgar himself at the helm. Now, while the story is probably exaggerated by later chroniclers, the message was real and undeniable. Edgar was overlord of all Britain. So Edgar had become the master administrator, the Holy King of England, and the Emperor of all Britain. But behind the public image was a man with a scandalous private life. Edgar had 3 children with 3 different women, creating a messy web of relationships, which would eventually have disastrous consequences. His first son, Edward, also known as Edward the Martyr, was his heir. But then came a major scandal. Edgar had an affair and a child with a young woman named Wulfthryth, who was a nun. For this, Archbishop Dunstan reportedly forbade him from wearing his crown for 7 years as penance. But the darkest story surrounds his third consort, Queen Elfrith. Legend has it that Edgar heard of Elfrith's incredible beauty and sent his trusted friend, an alderman named Athelwold, to see if the legend was true. But Athelwold was so stunned by her beauty that he lied to the king, said she was nothing special, and married her himself. When Edgar eventually found out, he was furious. He invited Athelwold on a hunting trip, and apparently murdered his friend with a javelin so he could marry his widow. Again, this story has probably been exaggerated, but it tells you everything you need to know about the ruthless reputation of the peaceful king. Edgar's peace was built on his own personal strength and authority, and in 975 that foundation was suddenly removed. Edgar died at the age of just 32, and the moment he was gone, England exploded. The nobles who had lost their lands to the monasteries immediately started taking it back by force. This anti-monastatic reaction plunged the kingdom into turmoil. But the bigger problem was the one that Edgar had created himself. Who would be king? He had 2 sons, the older Edward and the younger Athelred, the son of a powerful queen, Elfrith. 2 factions formed immediately, one led by Archbishop Dunstan, backed the elder son Edward, the other led by the ambitious Queen Elfrith, backed her son Athelred. After a tense standoff, Edward's side won, and the teenager was crowned king, but the peace was gone, and the kingdom was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. So was Edgar the Peaceful actually peaceful? In my opinion, no. He may have been a peacemaker, but he enforced it with an iron will. His reign was free of war because he made England too strong to attack and too controlled to rebel. His legacy left behind a truly unified kingdom, with a national currency, a modern system of government, and a powerful national church. Later kings, even the Danish conqueror Knut the Great, would look back on Edgar's laws as the standard for good governance. But his story is also a cautionary tale. The very things that made his reign so strong, his alliance with the church at the expense of the nobles, and his complicated family life, were the things that caused the chaos that followed his death. He was the architect of a peace so dependent on his own personal power that only he could maintain it, and when he was gone, the magnificent kingdom he had built come crashing down. Thank you for joining me in this dive into history. If you liked the video or found it informative, please give it a thumbs up, it really does help the channel grow, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. What are your thoughts on the reign of King Edgar the Peaceful, and do you think he was really that peaceful? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you'd like to learn about the kings that came before him, click the link in the end screen or check the full playlist in the description. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.